Hi, this is Dr. McGrath again, and I actually didn't finish Chapter 3, so this is Part 2 covering Chapter 3. There was an important area that I didn't cover, and that is the area on tonality and modality, which is kind of a tricky topic, but I'm not asking too many questions about that on the exam. Also, I'm going to use this video to cover musical instruments. So remember, we talked about that last class, and I want to review the families of instruments. So first we'll start with tonality and modality. Now, the thing to remember is that in most Western music, the collection of pitches that is used has a center pitch or a home pitch that's established. And that's established by emphasizing that pitch. And the name of that pitch is a tonic pitch. So basically what that means is we're using, for example, a collection of diatonic, a diatonic scale, which remember is 7 pitches. That was in the last video. So we use those 7 pitches, but we're going to emphasize one of those pitches. We emphasize it by starting on that pitch and probably ending on that pitch and using it quite often on maybe the downbeats of the measures. What you'll be responsible for on the exam is knowing that the home pitch or the center pitch is called the tonic, and that music that has a center pitch is called tonal music. Okay, again, tonal music has a center pitch, an important pitch that we keep returning to, a home pitch, and the name of that pitch is called the tonic. Feels like home. It's not so bad, is it? Okay, now we'll go in a little more detail about that because it's important to also understand how mode works. Now, modal music, basically, a good example, a good way of understanding this is to take the white keys of the piano. And we've talked about that gives us a diatonic scale. And if we start on C and we end on C, we get the scale we're used to hearing. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Okay, that's a diatonic scale, and it happens to be in a particular mode because it represents a certain pattern of half steps and whole steps. Now, if I do that and I center on the first pitch, on C, I'm going to get something that sounds really familiar. I'm sure you recognize that scale. We even think of the Sound of Music. Do, a deer, a female deer. But if we emphasize instead another note in that scale, then we're going to create a whole different feel. And we talked about this in class. And we'll get music that sounds like almost like it's from another culture, because certain cultures will often have music that centers around different pitches and will be in a different mode. Okay, so what you need to know is that the 2 most common modes used in Western music are the major mode and the minor mode. Okay, the major mode is the one that I just sang, and that sounds really happy. It sounds really nice, and most popular music uses that mode. But also there's music that uses the minor mode, which is a little bit darker sounding. Now, we talked in harmony about major chords and minor chords. Here we're talking about something a little bit different. We're not just talking about the harmony, even though that's affected by the mode. We're really talking about the group of pitches and which pitch is centered and how we go through, according to intervals, through the scale. So basically what you need to know for the exam is that a major mode sounds happy and a minor mode sounds sad. And the mode is defined by what the tonic is. Now that brings me to something a little bit different, and that is the idea of key. And when I talk about key in general, I'm not talking about the key of a piano. Okay, don't get confused by that. I'm talking about a key is basically if we take the pattern of half steps and whole steps that, for example, creates a major mode, we can move that. And we can start on any pitch we want to. As long as we keep that relationship of half steps and whole steps, we're going to get another major key. So we don't have to always start on the C of the piano to get that sound. We can start on any key of the piano. Oop, I said key, but it works that way too. I can start on any key or any note on the guitar, let's put it that way, or any note on the flute or any note on the clarinet. If I start on that note, as long as I follow the same pattern of intervals that's used for the major mode, I'm still going to get a major sound. That's how key is defined. So basically, what you'll need to know for the exam, again, I'm giving you a lot of extra stuff that's not in the exam, but what you will need to know for the exam is that a change in key shows that there's a change in the tonic. So the home note has changed when there's a change of key. And changes of key can happen within a piece of music, especially if the music's really long, if it goes on for 10 or 15 minutes. If we stay in the same key, it can get a little bit boring. So a lot of times what composers will do is they'll push through different keys. They'll visit other keys for a while. They'll move you away from home from the home key, not even just the home pitch. But to change key, we need to change the tonic. We create a new home note, a new tonic, and that creates the sense of a different key. It's a pretty cool effect, actually. Now, another term that you'll need to be familiar with is the term modulation. And modulation is the word that means that we've changed key within a piece of music. So that happens a lot of times, even in pop music, in a chorus, but especially in music theater. When you're listening to, a song, if the vocalist can really go, has a very large range, they'll be able to move through different keys. It takes some skill to do that. It's not the easiest thing. But that happens a lot in musical theater. It happens a little bit in popular music as well. And it happens a real lot in classical music, especially depending on the style. Okay, I think that covers basically what you need to know. So just to review really briefly, you need to know what tonal music is. That's music that centers around a fundamental home pitch. Wink, wink. That's on the exam. Almost, that's verbatim. You also need to know that major keys or major modes sound happy and minor modes sound sad. You'll need to have a basic idea of what key is, and that a change of key means a change in the tonic note. Remember what the tonic note is? It's the home pitch. It's the fundamental pitch. And modulation is another thing on the exam, and that's when we change key within a piece of music, when we change that tonic. Okay, so really there are only about 4 or 5 questions on this particular area, maybe even 4. So you should be in good shape if you review this and listen and take notes while I'm saying this. Now, I want to briefly cover, with the few minutes that remain, musical instruments. So what you'll need to know about musical instruments, and remember this is in your book on page 37. It's an interlude on musical instruments, and you don't need to know everything here. There's actually a lot of information here. It's interesting, and was your assignment to read it, so please make sure you read through this, because we'll be revisiting this quite often. But for the purposes of the exam, what you'll need to know are the 4 basic families or groups of instruments that are used in the orchestra. So try to come up with those right now. What are the 4 basic families? You have it? Strings, woodwinds, brass, and percussion. Those are the 4 groups. Again, strings, woodwinds, brass, and percussion. That is a question on the exam. You'll also need to be able to list in order from high to low the family of stringed instruments, and I'm going to go over that right now, and that from highest to lowest, and I'm talking about highest in pitch, or remember, how do we measure pitch? Frequency, and frequency is measured by what? Cycles per second. You got it. That was in the beginning of the test. That was in the first review video. So, in order of highest to lowest for the string family, do you have it? Violin, viola, cello, then double bass. And that actually goes by size, right, too? Because the violin is the smallest, the viola is a little bit larger, cello is much larger. We hold it like this. Oh, there. And then the double bass is very big. It would be difficult for me to play a double bass. My arms are not quite long enough. Well, I probably could, but it'd be difficult. Okay, so what's interesting about that too is the reason that they're smaller and they get higher pitch is, remember, the size of the vibrating object has an effect on the pitch or the frequency. So again, I'm just reviewing from the beginning because those are the first few questions on the exam. All right, what else do you need to know? You need to know that the saxophone belongs to the blank family of instruments. Don't be tricked by this one. Woodwinds. I know, you're thinking brass, but you're wrong. It's not brass. It belongs to the woodwind family because it sounds more like woodwinds. It shares a similar tone color to the woodwinds, and we actually use a reed, which is a piece of wood, to create the vibration, to create the sound from the mouthpiece. Okay, so saxophone belongs to the woodwind family. Do not get that wrong. Guess what? That's it. That's all I have on instruments. So that was our review video 2 from chapter 3, and the last review video we have left is on chapter 4, and that's about form. So you want to make sure to watch all of these, and maybe even multiple times. They're only 10 minutes long, so try to watch them twice. I'm giving you almost every single question on the exam through these videos, so please pay careful attention and use your book as a reference. Sayonara.